Could Tyreek Hill be an option for the Washington Commanders? Maybe so. We're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly with looking at Tyreek Hill and the Commanders uniform next season. Next on Washington Football Maniacs. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott again. Appreciate everybody showing up again with a new episode of Washington Football Maniacs. Today, we're going to talk about Tyreek Hill and could he be an option for the Washington Commanders next year and beyond? Maybe so. We're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly with the potential pursuit of Tyreek Hill. So we're going to look at a couple of reports about him being unhappy in Miami and what will be the likelihood that he could even be a target for the Washington Commanders. Then we're going to look at his contract, his stats, and other issues and see could he be a fit here in DC, and what other wide receiver targets could we be looking at in the draft or in free agency. So let's get into it. Now, the first report is to CBS, and it says Dolphins general manager says Tyreek Hill hasn't asked for a trade despite comments. Top landing spots for star wide receiver if dealt. All right, so let's see. Now, it says Tyreek Hill said repeatedly in 2024 that he intended to remain with the Miami Dolphins for the rest of his NFL career. After the Dolphins' last game of the 2024 season, however, the star wide receiver changed his tune, venting frustration Sunday about his role on a non-playoff team and suggesting multiple times that he is going to open the door for potential relocation ahead of the 2025 season. So, saying that, and before we get into my take, in my opinion, about whether or not the Washington Commanders should definitely pursue Tyreek Hill, let's take a look at his stats this previous season. He had 81 receptions, which was tied for 21st in the NFL, 959 yards receiving, 30th in the league, 6 touchdowns, which was tied for 35th, and he averaged 11.8 yards per reception. Now, looking at his contract, it's a good contract that could potentially turn to a bad contract relatively fast. His previous season, he had a base salary of $1.2 million with a $9.9 million signing bonus for an overall cap hit of $18.3 million. Now, fast forward to 2025, that cap hit will be $28.6 million. Now, the last year of his contract is 2026. And there is a potential. It says right here, Sport Track. Shout out to Sport Track. Says he has a potential out 2026. So this basically saying he has an overall cap hit of $51.8 million in 2026, which is $29.9 million in base salary and $6.5 million signing bonus. So again, there's several ways to look at this. All right, if the Washington Commanders were willing to pursue Tyreek Hill, I mean, looking at his performance last year, not his best year from a stat perspective. We know what his capabilities are. Look, in his prime, Tyreek Hill is a top 10 wide receiver with his speed, with his ability to, run after the catch. I mean, he's a monster. He is a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. Now, the money side of things, if you decide to pursue him, he is your number one option going forward. And 2026 is last year of his deal. He would be in age 32. So would he be he'll be sliding out of his prime, but how much of an impact, how much of a decline will his game have at that point? Will his speed start to decline at age 32? Well, we'll see. I think that's a risk you take if you indeed want to go out and try to acquire Tyreek Hill. Now, what would it take to get Tyreek Hill, especially for teams like Miami, where, when you got, Jalen Waddle, you have Tua quarterback, you have a couple of really good running backs, you have had offensive weapons there already. Now, you got to expect that the package to acquire Tyreek Hill is going to be in a mixed package. And if you're a team like the Washington Commanders, where you're not rebuilding, I mean, we're a 12-win team, so you better not call that rebuilding. We're a playoff team. But now the biggest thing with the Commanders is building that chemistry, building that experience, especially playoff experience, because they're about to get that experience, man, on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Bucks. So, and definitely tune in to Washington Football Maniacs to get that preview. But like I said, they are a playoff team, but they do have holes. Let's be real. The Washington Commanders are a playoff team. They won 12 games, and they've earned the right to be a playoff team. But playoff experience is important, and they're going to get that experience this year. And I do not believe that a long playoff push is going to happen this season. I think the next couple of seasons, you're going to see that formal Super Bowl push. Now, could they surprise me? Would I be unhappy if they decide to go to the Super Bowl and win it? Heck no. I'd be very, very happy. But I do believe in playoff experience and in the importance of having experience at that next level, because the playoffs is not the regular season. It's a totally different atmosphere. It's totally different football than the regular season. So I think they need to build that experience this year, and they will. But they do have holes. They have, wide receiver is a hole. And, looking forward, Terry McLaurin, we're about to get into that, what his status is beyond next year. And looking at the draft and looking at free agency, there's options for the Washington Commanders to really boost their wide receiver situation. But getting back to Tyreek Hill, the money and the package it would take to acquire him, I think, is it worth it? I'm going to say no. Because, again, the Washington Commanders need all the draft picks they can get to rebuild this team. Now, again, they're not formally a rebuilding team, but our team are definitely retooling. And you see the bright spots. Quarterback is an obvious bright spot. There's a lot of offensive weapons. The offensive line does need work, but it's, definitely a work in progress and has gotten better. The secondary, Marshawn Lattimore, yes. Sanders, yes, but you still have to add maybe another cornerback, in my opinion. And there's definitely holes in this team. So why give up the draft compensation? Why give up maybe a player like a Deron Payne or Jonathan Allen for a guy who, yes, Tyreek Hill, when combined with Terry McLaurin, makes his wide receiver situation a lot better, but why break the bank for a guy who is getting into his 30s? And for a guy who's about to hit 40, I really don't want to say that 30s is old, but in the realm of sports, it is. You start to be looked at as an older player. And when you're a player like Tyreek Hill, where he started out as a special teams guy and turned into a speed threat at wide receiver, the premier part of your game is speed, and you got to wonder at what point does that speed start to decline. And you really do not want to be on the hook for $51.8 million for a guy who's 32 years old, and it's questionable whether he's still going to be that same guy going forward. So we're going to pull up his stat line real quick, because Tyreek Hill, again, if you look at the stats real quick, he has started to decline. And yes, last year, and injuries have been an issue at certain periods in his career. But so let's get into his stats real quick. Bear with me. All right, so looking at his stat line, this previous season, again, he had 79 receptions for his 939 yards, which is a decline from the previous seasons, because last year, and here's the biggest thing with Tyreek Hill that is a positive. If you want to look for positives, he shows up. Availability is your best ability, and he definitely shows up. He played and started 16 games this year. Miami, saying in the last couple of years, 2023, played 16, started 16. 2022, played 17, started 17. And you see the trend. Kansas City in 2021, played 17, started 16. So he has played when called upon. I said injury issues, but there's been slight issues here and there, nothing serious. But if you look at the tail of the tape, he's been known as a guy who stays on the field. I mean, his worst year, if you're really being, nitpicking, is 2019, where he played 12 and started 12. So, like I said, his rookie year, he played 16, started 1 for 61 receptions, 593 yards, which was obviously his rookie campaign was worst year. But, I mean, if you look from the years of 2020 to 2023, he's been consistent as far as. Now, 2020, he didn't get over 100 receptions for obvious reasons, but he did get 1,276 receiving yards. But from the years of 2021, his last year in Kansas City, to the last two previous years, 2022 and 2023 in Miami, he's averaged roughly around 119 receptions and around 1,700 yards receiving. So he's a guy who is definitely a top 5 receiver in the NFL. And he would make the wide receiver situation in DC a lot better. But to me, it's a money thing. And what would it take to acquire him? And I think that it's not worth it. Not that he can't play, but the fact of the matter is we're still a retooling team. I mean, we need those draft picks. We need that money for other areas. And I don't think that right now in the stage in his career, even though I do think he can still be a key contributor, I mean, $51.8 million, I'm good. I think that you could definitely use that money in other areas. Something else to think about: locker room issues. There has been reports of locker room issues, not only in Miami, but in Kansas City. And, like I said, in the realm of sports, sometimes, it's not a sure thing that every time somebody's labeled a locker room issue, they are a bad character guy. Sometimes, especially for young players, they're passionate. And you see players, especially, in the realm like the NBA, Jordan Poole, the Washington Wizards. He's a guy who's always been kind of called a, low character guy, but it's not the case. He's a young player who is very, very passionate. So usually people label passionate young players as locker room issues, and I never agreed with that. But look at Tyreek Hill. Look at other factors, the off the field stuff, being pulled over for multiple things. I'm not gonna get into the off the field stuff, whether but let's be real. Being pulled over, that whole saga, domestic battery, stuff like that. I mean, he had his name involved with off the field stuff that, to a certain degree, you can be concerned. But like I said, looking purely on the field product, he can play. It's just at this stage of where the Commanders are at, is it worth really in 2026 picking up a $51.8 million cap hit? No. Um, is he worth giving up the draft capital to acquire him? No. And so that's what I'm saying. We're going to talk about Terry McLaurin in a minute, but yes, there are some hard decisions need to be made in Washington with the wide receiver situation, but Tyreek Hill is not that solution. So Terry McLaurin, looking at his contract situation real quick. Next year is the last year of his contract. And is it a guarantee that the Washington Commanders do sign him to an extension? I'm going to wait till my co-host Greg is with me so we can formally talk about the potential of a Terry McLaurin extension. But I will say this. In the 2025 year, which is last year of his contract in this age 30 season, he'll be making $15.5 million as a base salary with a $5.6 million sign-on bonus. And his overall salary will be, or the cap hit will be $25.5 million. So it's not too bad. But you got to imagine age 30, will they try to extend him? And if they do, what kind of numbers we'll be looking at? Like I said, I'm going to wait till my co-host is on here with me so we can formally have a discussion about what realistically, if they do decide to try to extend Terry McLaurin, what would be the salary and what would be the expectations, because he is going to his year 30 season. And while wide receiver going into your age 30 season is not the same as it used to be with other positions like running back, where because at running back, you're ancient old by the time you hit 30, and they're usually looking to move on from you at some point. Is that narrative changing a little bit? Absolutely. But Terry McLaurin, like I said, he is turning 30 next year, and it will be the last year of his contract. So, I mean, a lot of options for the Commanders going forward. What are some options to look at? Well, number one, looking at the free agent market next year, guys. Obviously, the big name on the list is T. Higgins, and for good reason. Could he complement Terry McLaurin? Absolutely. Could he be a number one receiver in Washington? Absolutely. I think that if bring him in, he could be a perfect complement. Number two, opposite of Terry McLaurin. And then if they decide to move on from Scary Terry after next year, you have a guy who can slide in and be that number one wide receiver. And then you can also go out in the draft and go get a legit number one across from your number one. Two legit number ones. That's what I would do. So T. Higgins I think is a good option for the Washington Commanders. I mean, another massive season, man. Is the second option in Cincinnati. So I think he's a guy who, the only issue is injuries. So he definitely has dealt with his fair share of injuries. So like I said, definitely give him a year, but with Terry and see if he can be that guy. But here's the thing with T. Higgins, he's going to command some money. So I think you definitely look at him and definitely see if he can definitely, be healthy, number one. But number two, I think he could be a target for the Washington Commanders in the all season. Some other names to look at: Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is definitely benefited from being the second best receiver in Tampa Bay, opposite Mike Evans. Will he be now again, injury issues, and he's about to turn 30. So, he can't be effective, but injuries, again, like T. Higgins, are the one factor that kind of keeps him from reaching his full potential. All right, number three, Stephon Diggs. I don't see him as being an option. He can ball, but he carries a lot of off the field stuff, and he can be a key contributor. But again, he is also at age 31. So maybe bring him in for a 1-year deal. But to me, you need to look at some long-term options at this stage. I mean, some other names: Amari Cooper from Buffalo, DeAndre Hopkins from the Chiefs, Keenan Allen with the Bears, Marquise Hollywood Brown, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens, now of the Kansas City Chiefs, Deontay Johnson of the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to say I'm out because, I mean, he refused to play in Baltimore, and to me, that just screams low character guy. And when you're looking to establish culture here in DC, you need high character guys. You don't need to go the opposite direction. So Noah Brown is on the list. Could he be a guy that we bring back? I would definitely consider bringing him back. Now, to me, he would be a depth piece. Now, if we miss out on wide receiver, I don't think we will. I think we're definitely either in free agency or in the draft, we're going to look to acquire a wide receiver. But look, worst case scenario, Noah Brown has proven that he can be a key contributor. Now, is he a legit stud number two who can definitely take a lot of pressure off of Scary Terry? He has shown so in glimpses. All right. And then number 10, Zay Jones of the Arizona Cardinals. And some other people receiving votes for top 10 wide receivers in the free agent market. Darius Slade and Rondell Moore. Olamide Zacchaeus, of all the other Commanders, Tim Patrick, some names. So, yeah, I think that if you're going to try to get a guy from this group, aim high, go T. Higgins. Now, there's some other people on the list also to look at. Odell Beckham, I'm out on. DJ Chark could be an option, but you're pretty much looking at German or people that just haven't panned out full time on their teams. You're looking at Juju Smith-Schuster, a guy who just bounced around all over the place. So, like I said, you either aim high and go get T. Higgins, or you rely on bringing back certain guys like Noah Brown or even Zacchaeus, who both of them have contributed. Now, let's look at the draft real quick, because there are 5 studs that I think you definitely target in the upcoming NFL draft. Number 1 is obvious, Travis Hunter, wide receiver / cornerback from Colorado. I don't think he's going to be available when we get to him. He's obviously going to be a top 5 draft pick. So you could pretty much just say all Vita seen right now to Travis Hunter. He's not going to be available to us. But some other people I think will. Tatoria McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona, 6'5", 210 pounds. I think if you're looking to add a more physical, taller receiver opposite Terry McLaurin, he definitely fits the bill, man. You're looking at the stat line, 84 receptions for 1,319 yards and 8 touchdowns. Not too shabby, in my humble opinion. Number 3, Luther Burden III, wide receiver out of Missouri. Again, 5'11" on the shorter side of things, but 208 pounds. But he can fly for 4.4 time in the 40. 61 receptions for 676 yards and 6 touchdowns. So, not the best showing, in my opinion, out of Missouri. 61 receptions, 676 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Look at the size. I think he can ball, but I think another year in college can definitely. Let's see, because I believe this was his junior year, so maybe you go back for another year, in my opinion, but it looks like he's probably going to come out in the draft. Isaiah Bond, number 4, another guy who's on the shorter side of 5'11" and 182 pounds. In my humble opinion, he had 33 receptions for 532 yards, 5 touchdowns, but and then right now sources are saying that he is a late first round or early second round talent, so he will be available if you're looking to add a guy who can run a little bit, and I think he's shown some ability bouncing around. He was in Alabama, then transferred to Texas. Some other names to look at real quick who has some size on the outside that I think can really complement Scary Terry. 3 names real quick. Trey Harris, wide receiver at Ole Miss, 6'3", 210. Savion Williams out of TCU, Texas Christian University, 6'5", 225. I like him. 60 receptions for 611 yards, 6 touchdowns. And he definitely presents a size mismatch. I'm trying to tell y'all, man. And another guy I'm looking at real quick is Kyron Lacey, wide receiver at LSU, 6'2", 213. And then other names, look at Nick Anderson, Oklahoma, Evan Stewart out of Oregon, and Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. And most receivers come out of Ohio State, just ask Terry McLaurin, usually pan out in the NFL, man. So like I said, definitely looking, definitely see if Marvin Harrison Jr. can definitely step up in year 2. But Emeka Egbuka would be a really nice number 2. Across from Scary Terry. So, all right, everybody, we talked about a lot tonight. Definitely let me know. Let me and Greg know in the comment section what you guys think. Tyreek Hill, are you willing to pay that price for a wide receiver who, yes, can be a top 10 receiver in the NFL, but does carry some baggage? Scary Terry, do you think it's time to really think about signing him to that extension or not? Why or why not? Let us know. And looking at the draft and free agency, do you want the Commanders to look at both, to add the next receiver to the wide receiver core, or what do you guys think? So definitely let us know in the comment section. All right, everybody. We are going to do a preview Friday for Sunday's playoff game versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So definitely tune in for that. Me and my guy, Greg Sykes, is definitely coming back on Friday for that preview for the playoff game on Sunday. And we're also going to talk about Scary Terry and that contract extension. So, all right, everybody, hail to the Commanders and peace.